Hello and welcome to the Meet the Parents podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 62 of the Meet the Parents podcast and another weekly dose of parenting-based chat. I'm Tim and tonight I'm joined by Hannah. Good evening.
Hello.
So we were due to be joined today by Amy, but unfortunately she's laid up in bed after sustaining a concussion that she got in, of all things, a game of rounders. Get well soon, Amy, and hopefully we'll see you back fighting fit again soon. Anyhow, the show must go on, so Hannah and I are going to have a chat about holidays, ear piercing, and her new blogging venture. So it's that time of year again. Some schools have broken up for the end of the academic year already, and many more will be finishing this week, which means it's time for the Great British Summer Holiday. Or at least it is for those of us whose holidays are constrained by the dates of school terms. Now, Hannah, school term times aren't something you've had to worry about yet, but just remind us, how long is it until Toby starts in school?
We've only got 1 year left of holiday freedom. He starts school here in September, which I'm firmly in denial about.
The year will be gone before you know it, so get them in while you can. So, what sort of holidays do you like to go on now? And is it any different now that you have two kids to how it was with one and previously with none?
Well, to say that pre-children, I would be quite happy to just stick a few items of clothing in a backpack, get on a plane and see where I ended up. And now I'm slightly different. So that's quite an understatement. I mean, I've always been really, really keen traveller and I've travelled for months on end, Southeast Asia, South America, various bits of Europe and Australia and places. So it's something I'm really passionate about. Since we've had kids, we have toned it down an awful lot, partly because of money, partly because of logistics. We've done 2 foreign holidays since the kids arrived, one just with Toby to Tenerife and one with both of them to Lanzarote. Apparently we like the Canaries, but actually the Canaries are a fantastic location we found for small kids. It's definitely changed. So we're more package holidays now, or our absolute perfect holiday, and the best one we've had since becoming parents was a week in Centre Parks. So we're mostly just sort of staying fairly local around the UK.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Travel's definitely less spontaneous now than it was pre-kids, isn't it? I think we were quite similar. We used to book a lot of our trips, often relatively last minute, and if we were on a driving holiday, say, we would just rock up wherever we were and find ourselves a motel for the night. And nowadays everything seems to get booked up 6 to 12 months in advance, because that's what you have to do to ensure you get what you want, especially if you're trying to book family rooms for 5.
Yes.
And military campaigns have been less precisely planned than some of our holidays. I mean, the other thing that's really changed for us, as I'm sure it has for you, is the cost, of course, isn't it? I mean, we talked a few weeks back about how holiday companies, airlines and hotels all charge a massive premium during school holidays. I mean, that's simple supply and demand, really, but everything is much more expensive, especially when you have to book for 5 people, or for 4 in your case, rather than 2. So yeah, I think gone are the days when we would just book ourselves 3 weeks in the US or New Zealand and hire a car and just go. Nowadays it's a combination of domestic holidays, European holidays, with a lot of family friendliness and a lot of early nights. Not necessarily worse or better, but they're certainly very different, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, as I say, we spent a week in Centre Parks a couple of months ago, and it was genuinely one of the nicest weeks we've ever spent as a family. We spent a hell of a lot more money and 2 weeks in Lanzarote nearly a year ago, and it had its lovely moments, but it was also quite horrific in places. Toby got an ear infection. Both the kids were massively overheated. The air conditioning broke in the room. And as you say, the expense of needing enough rooms for everybody, or, you know, the facilities with childcare or just swimming pools, things like that. It really does make a huge difference.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said for holidaying in the UK as well, isn't there? As I think, you know, the shops are familiar. You know, you're driving on the correct side of the road, and it takes a lot of the stress out of it, doesn't it? And in a way that it's perhaps less exciting to do so before kids. Actually, in many ways, it's more attractive with kids, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if Toby had have gotten the really bad ear infection at Centre Parks that he'd gotten in Lanzarote, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as stressful. For starters, would have been speaking the same language as the medical professionals. And also, if he'd have become really ill and we'd have needed the home comforts, we'd have just chucked everybody and everything in the car and driven the 2 hours back home again. So it is a very different dynamic.
Yeah, so have you and Phil got any plans to go on holiday with Toby and Martha either this summer or at any point in the rest of the year?
Probably not over the main summer holidays. Obviously, because we're not restricted to summer holidays, there's no need for us to pay the extra prices. We would love to try and fit another Centre Parks holiday in, possibly towards the end of the year, and kind of get the Christmas spirit started, because we just had such a lovely time. Next year, I'm hopeful that we might be able to squeeze Euro Disney in before Toby starts school. That would be lovely. But yeah, I think nothing set in stone yet. We're just going to see how the next couple of months go, really.
And next year, I suspect, is probably a really good time to be going to Disneyland Paris, because we went last summer, and while it was still brilliant and we had no shortage of things to do, a lot of the park was closed for refurbishment ahead of the 25th anniversary of the park this year. Consequently, this year is really popular and it seems to be quite a bit more expensive. So next year is probably the perfect time to go, and the kids will love it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, Martha will be, if we go sort of about this time, late June, early July, Martha will be just over 2. Toby will be around his 4th birthday. And I just think it will be so magical for both of them. Martha won't truly understand it, but she'll still love it. So I just think it would be a fantastic way to sort of celebrate Toby's end of preschool and sort of move in that next milestone towards school.
Yeah, and it'll be a fantastic time to go, and of course you'll be able to go outside of school holidays for the last time. So.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, this summer the 5 of us are going to be piling into the car in mid-August, and we're heading across the Channel for a couple of weeks or so across Europe, passing through where we're going, Germany, Switzerland, the Italian lakes, and then bombing it back through France. And it's the second year in a row we've done an extended road trip, although we're covering a lot more ground and travelling a lot further this year. Well, last year we restricted ourselves to driving to the French Alps via Paris. And then it will be our traditional long weekend at Butlins over the Halloween half-term, us and about 7 million other people. And one thing we're finding now is that with Cara now being 5, she's old enough to have quite detailed memories about previous holidays, and she's already started talking about all the things that she did last summer that she wants to do this year, which is really sweet. So, is Toby yet at the stage where he remembers anything about previous holidays, or is it still a bit early for that for him?
I think it's a little bit early. He does sometimes, though, he'll come out with something and you think that was months ago. When we were in Lanzarote, he got a T-shirt from Kids Club and he called it his Pink Wiggle T-shirt. And for months afterwards, Mummy, I want to wear my Pink Wiggle T-shirt. And he was only just over 2 when we went. But I think now he's just got so much going on in his life. He hasn't really been speaking ever so much about things that we've done, like Centre Parks.
Yeah, and then it's funny the things that they do remember, and a lot of those memories stick with them for years, so it'll be interesting to see what he does remember when the memories do start to take hold. Having been on holiday with Toby and Martha, I mean, what would you say are the key differences in travelling with 2 small kids rather than 1?
When we went away with Toby, he was the priority. And so he was, I think, 7.5, 8 months old when we went to Tenerife. And we could just focus everything on him, you know, whether that was being back at the villa for his bedtime or whatever. It was very much tailored around him. Whereas in Lanzarote, Martha was 4 months old and Toby was just over 2, and it was very different. So you almost end up, I don't know how you guys manage this with 3, but you almost end up one of you goes off with one of them and the other goes off with the other one. And to a certain extent, you have 2 separate holidays and then just come together for meals and swimming and whatever. So I found it was more of a juggling act. Not so much on the aeroplane, which I think people expect would be the hardest bit, but we just tanked Toby up on snacks and Peppa Pig on the iPad, and Martha was quite happy to breastfeed the whole journey. So that was actually relatively stress-free.
That really rings a bell when I think about some of the earlier holidays we had when the kids were, 2, 3, 4 years old. And one thing that has definitely changed is as they've gotten older, the boys in particular are much more self-sufficient. They're much more able to take responsibility, and they're also much more able to look after both themselves and Cara. So things have definitely become easier in that respect. And I think the biggest thing for us was the difference between travelling as a family of 4 and then travelling as a family of 5. So many things when you go on holiday are really geared up for families of 4, from the discounted family tickets that you get at theme parks to hotels and other accommodation. Plus, it's generally much easier and quicker to get into a restaurant as a party of 4 than as a party of 5 or larger. I mean, other than that, as we've talked about a little bit already, it's the general economics that have changed. Even flying with budget airlines, the cost of paying for 5 airline tickets, hiring an MPV rather than an ordinary car, and paying for larger accommodation all makes the idea of driving ourselves much cheaper and more attractive, which is now what we've done the last couple of years for our big summer holidays. And in many ways, I actually prefer it, as it means we move about more rather than staying in one place. So there's more variety. There isn't enough there isn't time for the kids to get bored in one location because you're always on the way to somewhere else. And I don't mind doing the driving myself.
I actually love the idea of road trips around Europe. It's something that Phil and I have spoken about doing since long before we had the children. So the fact that you're doing it with the kids is fantastic. I love that. And I kind of look at that and think, oh, that could be us in a couple of years' time. So I think it's brilliant.
Any top tips for going on holiday with 2 small kids? I mean, what sort of advice would you give a family of 4 who are maybe heading off on a big holiday for the first time?
I would say not to be stressed about it. I think people really panic, especially about the aeroplane, and just having the attitude that what will be, take loads of snacks for them. Like I said, we put loads of Peppa Pig episodes, we downloaded them on iPlayer on the iPad. Who cares if they're watching non-stop Peppa Pig for 4 hours if they're happy? And it gets everybody there in one piece. And also, we personally found that nobody was giving us horrible looks or tutting or eye rolls, nothing. People actually were offering to help. Did they want us to hold the baby so that I could get the changing bag down? So it's just about allowing people to be nice about it, because I think it's very easy to panic that everyone's judging you, or if your baby cries, nobody's judging you, and if they are, then they're not worth your energy. So I think just relaxing and going with the flow is probably the thing that has made our holidays good.
Now, I think I mentioned some of our tips last summer when we talked about long trips in the car, but what are we going to be doing? We'll be loading up our little portable Wi-Fi hard drive with lots more films so that the kids can watch different movies on different tablets in the car if they want to. I'm also planning to make up little personal care boxes for each of them, which we're going to pack with personal little goodies for them to help while away the less interesting moments of some of those longer drives. And finally, we're going to repeat what we did last summer by reconfiguring the seating in our MPV. So instead of sitting the 3 in a row across the middle, we're going to have 2 in the middle and 1 in the back, which costs us a little bit in terms of luggage space, but it will save us a whole load of bickering en route. So that's our guide to having a peaceful and harmonious summer holiday. Or at the very least, one where every member of the family returns alive. You can't set your expectations too high. A video showing a baby getting its ears pierced has sparked quite the controversy, with a Facebook post generating 3.6 million views and over 12,000 comments, with some commenters even likening it to child abuse. So, Hannah, what's your reaction to this story? Is it something we should be appalled at, or is it much ado about nothing, or somewhere in between?
I keep switching. I personally, it's not something that I like. I don't think it's necessary. It's people have said, oh, but vaccines make them cry. That to me is a completely ridiculous argument, because vaccines are for that child's health and for other people's health as well, with herd immunisation. Ear piercing hasn't got health benefits. It can in fact cause health problems if they get infected. So personally, it's not what I like. Initially, I thought, oh, well, it's not abuse, because that almost dilutes the term abuse. And then I thought of all the different types of abuse. It's not just sexual, it can be neglect, it's physical, it's financial, all these different types of abuse. And is holding a child down, a baby who hasn't said that they want this to be done, is restraining them whilst a gun pierces pieces of silver or whatever into there, is abusive? Well, arguably it could be seen that way. So I keep sort of switching between live and let live and, oh my God, no, this is horrific and I can't believe people are doing it.
Yeah, because in the video you can see the child becoming visibly quite distressed and crying out after two workers puncture the baby's earlobes at the same time using piercing guns. And, I think it's that's led to people calling it child abuse. But, while it's certainly a story that's elicited some really strong reactions, and I do completely understand why some people have started calling it child abuse. But I guess similar to yourself, at the same time, I think that using that particular phrase belittles what we would more normally term child abuse, which to me is a far more vile act than this. I mean, that's not to diminish the level of distress that the baby is obviously in at all, but I think the choice of words perhaps is a little bit too emotive and a bit pushing things a little bit too far.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think abuse has a lot of long-term repercussions, and it's maybe sustained, or it leads to issues further on in life, whether that's emotional or physical or whatever. And I do think that, I mean, I didn't want to watch the video. I did watch it and I hated it. But at the end of the day, that baby isn't going to be a victim of sustained physical or emotional torment because she's had her ears pierced.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because it's a moment of pain, I guess. Well, hopefully, if it doesn't get infected, and it's not, as you say, it's not something that's going to cause likely long-term trauma in the way that abuse, in the way that we normally use the word, might do. But I guess with a story like this, it's so difficult to express an opinion one way or the other without being judgmental. I mean, I have to say it's not something I would ever have considered doing for any of my children without their consent. But that's my personal opinion, and I wouldn't necessarily want to push that on someone or necessarily jump to conclusions about the choices that they've made. At the same time, having said that, while any grown adult is entitled to do what they want, I do really struggle to understand what the parents' motivation for piercing a baby's ears is. And you talked about vaccination, and there's a very obvious motivation for doing that, but piercing a baby's ears, is that something really that's being done for the child's benefit, or is it being done for the parents' benefit? And I think that's why I'm having so much trouble understanding what the justification for this is. I just don't get it.
No, I totally agree. I mean, even if you think they look cute with little diamonds in their ears or something, that's not in any way for that baby. I just can't see any valid reason why you would make that choice. It's not I don't understand it. I mean, if you really want to go over the top cutesy with your baby, stick a giant weird bow on its head and a big glittery tutu or something. Do you know, I just think there's other ways to do the whole overtly cute thing than piercing their ears.
Yeah, such as a Beyonce style photo, maybe.
Oh, well, if you want to say so. Just draped in floral curtains and stand in front of an archway. Why not?
Can you remember how old you were when you first had your ears pierced?
I think I was 10. I'm pretty sure I was asking from about the age of 8, and I'm pretty sure I was told in no uncertain terms that I had to wait until I was double figures.
Doing it for a young baby is one thing, and doing it for a child is another. So, when it comes to Martha, or Toby perhaps even, when do you think you would allow them to have their ears pierced? Would it be around 10, similar to yourself?
I would imagine so. It certainly wasn't a big bone of contention between my parents and I that I wasn't allowed to have it done sooner than that. And I think probably by about that sort of age, you're not saying that you've got a huge sense of responsibility or anything like that, but I think by a 10-year-old is certainly more aware of the notion that it's going to hurt, the notion that you've got to keep it clean. And so that slight element of self-responsibility that it's going to hurt and cleaning it is going to sting. But if you don't do that, it'll get infected. I just think that understanding is far more developed at about the age of 10 than it would be a couple of years earlier than that.
Let's wind up this discussion by looking a step beyond ear piercings. So with ears, they're at least non-permanent because you can always allow the holes to grow back over. But what about something like getting a tattoo, which is much harder to reverse? So in the UK, the 1969 Tattooing of Minors Act, the research I do for this podcast, states that it's illegal to tattoo anyone under the age of 18. What do you think about that? Does that feel about right?
Yeah, I think so. I've got one tattoo and I was 18 when I had it done, and I don't regret it. I think that I'm glad I didn't have it done any younger, when I maybe would have made a more poor choice of design or whatever. And I don't think anyone under 18 should be able to make that sort of decision. It's too big and it's too permanent.
The only thing that I find slightly odd is that the minimum age is 18, given that you can have sex, you can drive a car, you can get married with parental consent before the age of 18. So it's just one of those odd inconsistencies of British law where the age limit is 18 rather than 16 or 17. But broadly speaking, I think it makes sense. And tattoos aren't really my thing, but would I allow one of my kids to have one? Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, certainly, by 18, they're old enough to make a decision about it themselves. I can't say I'd be overly thrilled if one of them wanted to have their entire back or half their face or neck tattooed, and I might advise them to exercise a degree of caution and consideration before committing to something as significant as that. But yeah, I mean, by the time they're 18, you'd hope that they're able to weigh up the pros and cons for themselves and make a mature decision, regardless of what their parents or their peers might say. So if we take that principle back to ear piercing, should there be some kind of legal minimum age here as well, or do you think that's over legislating for every little thing?
I don't know. Again, I feel like it's an opinion thing, because whilst I personally don't agree with piercing the ears of a baby or a young child, unlike a tattoo, which is, as we've said, permanent or exceptionally difficult to have lasered or whatever, like you said earlier, ear piercing, you can take it out and allow it to heal over, and in theory that's all fine. So whilst I don't agree with it, I don't know if legislating it is the right thing to do, because I would worry that if someone was really intent on having their little child's ears pierced, would they then go somewhere that maybe wasn't regulated, that wasn't using hygienic equipment, things like that. So yeah, I don't necessarily think that legislation is the way to go in this instance.
So those are our thoughts on ear piercing for babies. Next week we'll be covering driving lessons for 2-year-olds and why all 5-year-olds should be allowed to vote in general elections. finally, it's been quite a year or so for you, hasn't it, Hannah? You've had the birth of Martha, a new business venture in Apples and Pips, and then recently a return to full-time employment, and now a brand new blog, The Lifestyle Log. So Hannah, you're still going to be focusing on family life with Budding Smiles, aren't you? So what made you decide to start up a second blog? Has the decision to do this been influenced by starting the new job at all?
Yeah, I think indirectly it probably has been influenced by starting the new job. I think, to be honest, it probably goes back somewhat to the Brexit referendum and David Bowie dying and Trump becoming president, and just the absolute social and political chaos that was 2016. So in and amongst all my how cute, I've got a brand new baby and isn't she lovely, and Toby's turned 2 and all of that happened last year, which was exactly why I started Budding Smiles, suddenly I was finding a more political voice and a more opinionated voice when it came to current affairs. And I loved writing those posts. But as time went on, I felt like I was writing more of them, still not tons, but enough that I felt they didn't fit on Budding Smiles anymore. And so I thought, well, do I just stop writing them? Well, no, I really enjoy writing them, and I feel like I've got something I want to say. If anyone listens is a whole other question, but I wanted to say it. And then when I started my job, I felt like suddenly I was moving away from sole identity as mummy, and that's still a very important identity, but all of a sudden I was finding a bit of Hannah again, and I just thought, okay, well, let's get the Lifestyle Log. One of my best friends, Shell, who is at shellmccann.com, she actually had the Lifestyle Log, decided not to continue with it, had the domain just sitting there in her hosting package. So I said, well, I'll have it. And that was that, really. So it just felt like, I mean, the tagline is rediscovering the me behind the mum. And that's what it's all about. Budding Smiles is family, and the Lifestyle Log is me and my thoughts.
So we can expect to see you expanding on life and the big wide world in general whenever the mood takes you going forward.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, as with Budding Smiles is grown more than I thought it would, in the fact that I've done a lot of work with brands and things. But the Lifestyle Log is really just a space for me to play around with the more adult side of things.
So any particular goals then about where you want to be going with it in, say, 12 months time, or is it just going to be a case of going with the flow?
For now, it's just going with the flow. Obviously, as you've alluded to, I have got rather a lot on at the moment. 2 very young children, finding a school for Toby, potty training Toby, which we're on day 3 of doing, brand new, a new job. I'm out the house for 60 hours a week with that, with commuting as well, 2 blogs, a business, and at some point, I occasionally throw plates in the dishwasher and hope they come out clean, and have the odd sentence exchange with my husband. So really, I just want to go with the flow and just enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I know exactly how you feel. I mean, until a little over a year ago, I'd been juggling at least 2 different blogs, and at one stage 4 for several years, fueling various different interests, from parenting to cycling to a sideline doing TV reviews for Metro. So I know exactly what it's like trying to juggle multiple blogs and a job. It's exciting, but it's also challenging trying to fit everything in and attending to the small matter of children and the rest of the family as well. So yeah, I mean, I certainly learned to survive on much less sleep than I was used to. Having had babies in the house for a number of years is pretty good training for that, I found.
Yeah, it certainly is. I'd say having toddlers is as well, because mine still don't sleep through on a guaranteed basis.
I have to say, I guess it's very similar, I think, to what you're saying. I just enjoyed the challenge of writing about different topics, and having to be on point and switching between different voices across different topics, and it's a really exciting thing to do. So good luck, and hope it goes well and you have fun with it.
Thank you.
So before we go, what have we been up to recently? This has opened the floodgates time, I know, for you.
It's a very loaded question, Tim. I'll I'll start with the ups. We went to Alton Towers for Toby's 3rd birthday, which was part of my blog role as an ambassador for Confidence Kids Swimwear. And we stayed in the brand new CBeebies Hotel, and we went to the park, and we went to the Splash Landings water park they've got there, and we just had the most fantastic weekend. It was wonderful. So that was lovely. And my brother came home from New Zealand. We've not seen him since Martha was 10 days old. So we had a reunion with him and a barbecue, and met his girlfriend, who's absolutely lovely. So that was all really nice. And then I went to Rockingham with work, and that was fantastic. And then slowly things got a little less wonderful, with my blog and shop basically ceasing to exist temporarily because of hosting problems, and my car being in a very grey line at the garage between life and death. I think it's on life support as we speak. So yes, I'm sort of in a bit of a turmoil at the moment, as far as Phil, bless him, working on the blog and the shop to get them both back up and running, and also trying to figure out how the heck I get the kids to nursery and me to work without a car.
Good luck with that. And we've had a busy week or so, but nowhere near as eventful as you. Isaac joined a local cricket club recently, and he played in his first competitive match on Saturday. On the same day, we were hosting a barbecue with our old university friends who we're going to be spending part of our summer holiday with. So, of course, cricket plus barbecue meant, surprise, surprise, it rained for most of the day. Thanks so much, British weather. But we had a good day nonetheless. Highlight of the day, though, was after we'd finished eating, having 5 kids huddling in our living room, all belting out songs from Sing. Apologies to the neighbours for that. And that's it for this episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. We'll be back next week, but in the meantime, here's where you can find the two of us online, hopefully. Hannah?
So in theory, I'm at buddingsmiles.co.uk, but if all else fails, I am definitely at Budding Smiles on all social media platforms.
And you'll find me at slouchingtowardsthatcham.com and across social media as at @ThatchamDad. You can download this podcast on iTunes and Android devices, on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com, and via a variety of podcasting apps. You can also follow us on Twitter at ParentsPodcast and Facebook at facebook.com/meettheparentspodcast. So thanks for listening, and do please join us again next week. Good night.